I'm just gonna keep that running for now.
Get down tonight.
Ooh.
Get down tonight. Do a little dance.
Stop abusing.
What? It's not abuse.
She looks so sad right now.
She does, doesn't she?
She does. Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Dragons.
Yes.
We are here sitting with friends talking about Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop stuff, and all other sorts of crap. I'm here joined tonight by Anas.
Howdy.
And our fan chat is right there. You can't see her.
Yeah.
She'll be asking us random questions throughout the day. And as you know, Talking Dragons is a terrible show, and we have no structure whatsoever. And we're always supposed to stop saying yeah. Thanks, Dan. We are going to be here talking with our very, very, very professional... She really looks sad.
I'm being professional, man.
All right. Our very professional, very... the best DM in Brunei.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, cut that part out. That's false advertising right there.
Okay. Well, coronavirus, probably gonna, minus the numbers quite soon. So, after Foot, it's you. There you go. And we're gonna be talking a little bit about you, Anas.
Yes.
We heard around the store that you have just finished a campaign.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I have. My 1 year long weekly campaign with me DMing for a couple of friends and my brother, we finally finished the first long campaign I have ever done that we actually got to the end, and I'm done. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's over.
You're retiring from D&D.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay. So wait, this is your first ever campaign?
Not at all. Actually, I had another campaign before this with roughly the same group of friends. But because, when we give advice to DMs and you tell them, it's like, oh, just have fun and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It definitely works for one-shots. It definitely works for, like short campaigns. But when you do a long campaign and a regular campaign, there's so much more that you have to consider. And one of them that I didn't realize that Master DM Safi had mentioned earlier, needing to rest, I didn't know that. And so I hit like a point where
DM burnout,
and I took it out on my brother, and so it just collapsed from there.
Okay, so there was like actual infighting in the group.
Oh yeah, most definitely, yeah. But that's why one of the really important things when you're doing a long campaign like this, like Master DM Safi says, you gotta know how to keep your energy, don't tire yourself out. It's very simple advice, but damn, is it important. Can I swear on the show?
Yeah, sure. Fuck it.
She
Shit.
swore.
Balls, yeah.
Sapphire did it.
Ass. Anyways, we heard a lot about like how there's like a lot of like melding of certain like RPG systems that we promised that we wouldn't fight over about for a very long time.
It's not a fight if you're winning. I mean,
true. I am winning in that conversation. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which campaign did I just finish?
Oh, the D&D campaign, the 5th edition D&D campaign,
the Pathfinder setting, the version. So yes, to get past your disgust here for the next next hour or so. Yes, it was a Pathfinder setting campaign. Both campaigns were because I made.
Do you think that's why the first one failed?
Absolutely not. Because the first one we stuck too much to the 5e rules.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so that's where it just went to shit.
And then your brother was fighting.
Yeah, because of all the 5e rules. So I just had to merge my own, and then it started working.
Does it even stay as a 5e campaign? Would you even call it a D&D campaign if it's a Pathfinder setting?
Well, I mean, what is D&D? It's a role-playing game with generally the same kind of mechanics.
Right.
So, in a broad way speaking, is any kind of homebrew campaign a D&D campaign? Well, sure it is,
Yeah, because you're using D&D rule sets.
When you homebrew it,
yes.
You keep the general sense, action economy, that kind of thing, and then you just homebrew a bunch of rules. It can still be considered 5e.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in a way, you are using Pathfinder settings. When you say that means the world of Pathfinder.
Yeah, because a great thing and or something I definitely do recommend of the DMs is you should really know the material that you have. If you're having a long-term campaign and the players literally have the ability to go anywhere in your world, you kind of have to know what's there in the world. And with 5e, they have a lot of seasons and there's a lot of material there, but they don't really go into the unbeaten path. Like, for example, they have specific cities that the players will have to play through during the modules and that kind of thing. But if they go, let's say, just a little bit, a few miles off to the east away from the main cities campaign, what's there? You don't really know. But in Pathfinder, I don't know what it is about Paizo, but they love releasing all these guides and settings to what's in the world.
Like the city's already there.
Yeah, the city's already there. They're written with what kind of structure they've got, what kind of policies they've got, what kind of racial tensions, these important really things, even an entire like log of history of this place. And so you could literally pick out any part of those stories in the setting, and you're like, oh, okay, this could be an NPC. I was like, oh, okay, so he'd be looking for one of these that just happens to tie into this character's current story progression. Right. And then bam, and you just plug and play.
So, for example, I play Waterdeep, and I play Avernus as well. Mm-hmm. But between Waterdeep and Avernus, if I wanted to travel between these two cities, like there'd just be nothing there.
Yeah, so in 5e, in the Faerun world, Waterdeep and Avernus is, of course, on a different plane.
Baldur's Gate, I meant, sorry.
Oh, so yeah, if you're in Baldur's Gate and you wanted, like, for example, in the Avernus season we're in right now, how did they get from Baldur's Gate to the Nine Hells? It was a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina. It was Fai Chen, the interplane shifting merchant that is just a kind of NPC, like, Deus Ex Machina to get you from place to place.
All right.
And that absolutely makes sense. But it feels a little bit too convenient, but of course it has to be written like that. I mean, it is a game after all. You can't just leave it up to the players to do this when they're like level 4. No one has like a plane shift or anything like that.
Sure, right.
Yeah, but in the Pathfinder setting in Golarion, there are plenty of ways you could get to the Nine Hells, and you might accidentally even do it yourself. Like if you are in the like, for example, the country of Nazis, which is literally they all worship devils and that kind of thing. Like in our campaign, if they had chosen to go to hell, then it was literally an option that they could have done. They could have just gone to any one of the people in the town and figured out, oh, hey, how do I get to hell? And then because the structure of the city was already like that, you could find a free roaming devil or somewhere that you could contract with that could bring you over to the Nine Hells. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only way. There's ways you could get into space that are just lying around. And like I said, the kind of lore behind Pathfinder, they're very like in depth, but it just makes it so much easier to figure out what to do when your players want to do something you don't expect. And I think that's what I enjoyed, and that's what I was able to work with.
Sure, in Pathfinder.
In Pathfinder stuff, yes. So,
right. I mean, I'll give you that. I mean, Pathfinder does have a more complete world, definitely. Mm-hmm. And I think they've been using it since first edition as well. Like, they've expanded on it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're very similar. I mean, it's not like the material is so far away from 5e that you couldn't integrate them. I mean, in Faerun, you have just north of Neverwinter on the Swords Coast, there's a city that's run by a lich. But then they don't really mention that kind of thing very much. Mm. And you don't really feel that when you're in, let's say, Baldur's Gate. And in Baldur's Gate, it's like a rough and tumble city. But then you never hear the DM say, it's like, oh, there's this drow here, and like, well, why is this drow here? It's like, oh, I came from a city north of Neverwinter where like there's a lich who rules. Like, that exists in the world?
Okay, we gotta go there.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because you never really mention that kind of thing. But in Pathfinder, every city has a kind of deal with every other city. Mm. So when the players are in the city of Man, they're like, there's always going to be like soldiers that keeps like, oh, we're at war with the Nazis at Cheliax, or hey, there's some trade happening in Katapesh, which is like Persia, or Taldor is having a tournament in a Colosseum or somewhere.
Right.
It's really easy to see the dynamic of these places, and that's why the world feels so much more united. That's why when my players, they're like, okay, we need to go find this artifact. This artifact sounds like it would very much likely be in Sothis, the Egypt of the world. And I didn't have to mention it. They knew, because they were talking in a tavern, and then they overhear these things. It's like, yeah, but isn't that place like full of mummies? Do you really want to go there? It's like, yeah, we have one cleric and she's, and he's that city is about Seren Ray, so wouldn't that be safe? And then another one says like, but don't they technically support Pharasma with the whole dead thing? They immediately organically have these conversations. I'm like, yes, this is it. They know.
It's basically like when you have a homebrew campaign, basically, because when you get to have a homebrew campaign, you get to make up your own worlds and stuff like that.
True, yeah.
And you sort of like create that world for you. And if you were kind of like the super anal guy who writes like his own textbooks and stuff like that, you would be the guy to give that to your players. And if they really wanted to read that, that would be great.
Yeah.
But that's what Pathfinder's for.
In a way, it is, yeah. I mean, the players will try to read up on the world themselves, but luckily enough, how it's recommended for you to run certain modules and stuff is, like, for example, here we have Adventures League, right? But then in Pathfinder, they have something called the Pathfinder Society games, which is similar to Adventures League, where you're Pathfinders who are essentially like Indiana Jones is going all around the world looking for artifacts.
Right.
And literally, one of the goals for each and every player is that depending on where you're from, you have a different side mission, like a personal side mission from an important NPC that's literally part of the world. And so when they come together, they're like, okay, I'm from Sothis. I need to find out this thing. Oh, I'm from Andoran. I need to save this person. And it's the same quest, but because the game automatically gives you these things, you kind of see how it merges with any situation. And I think that's really, really interesting. And it makes it so much more easy to run a game despite how many different types of players. Like, I know, the stereotype of, oh, I'm a paladin, so I don't want to do anything evil. It's like, oh, I'm a rogue, I want to steal everything. And then there's always a dichotomy between the two.
Sure.
Yeah, but in Pathfinder, it's not so much of an issue because the rogue is going to do his rogue stuff. And it doesn't cross upon what the paladin needs to do because they've got different things that they need to succeed at in the same mission. And so it makes the game a little bit more playable. It doesn't make them, fight as much like in the actual as players. So there's a lot of lubricant there.
Sure. I think we've spent enough time advocating for Pathfinder. And let's get to
try it out. Read the material.
Wait, are we recording?
I don't know. Are we?
This is what happens when the producer's not here. Anyway.
Yeah. So we're not recording yet?
I don't know. Sure.
There's no red light. Oh no, we're not recording.
Anyway,
is there supposed to be a red light?
No, there's a red font there that says REC. So I'm assuming that means it's recording.
I certainly.
Okay,
hope
so we spent enough time advocating for Pathfinder.
There is memory inside that card, yeah.
Yes.
Didn't he just pass you a new memory card?
Huh.
It's okay.
What's this doing in here?
Okay. It's okay.
But so I brought you in, under false pretenses. I actually wanted to talk to you about the campaign, but I think trying to do that in an hour podcast would be a little bit of an injustice to your campaign because it's a year-long campaign.
And plus, I do not want to do that. There's way too much to unpack there.
Too much to unpack, but I do want to talk about like your mindset going into the finale. I think that's something we could probably talk about for half an hour. Yeah. So I've been through one. I've been through one finale as well. So I'm pretty proud of that one. So we can like relate on some level now. So I wanted to talk to you about like what did you want your players to feel at the end of that campaign?
Well, I think one of the things that I kind of regret was in that first campaign, because it ended so abruptly, my players who were really into the worlds and the characters that they had already created never got their ending. And so even coming into the new campaign with completely new characters, they still felt that longing to finish their old players' storylines. And I think that's one of those things that really pushed me to want to finish the game, is because I wanted those players to have that closure. I wanted them to not want to play those characters again because they didn't want their stories. They wanted to play more of that person. I wanted them to be so happy with playing the characters the way they did that they could just say goodbye and just enjoy having a proper character that lived their life, as a like through all of the things that they did.
Yeah.
And that's what my mindset. And I was like, oh wow, that's insurmountable. It's like, okay, 6 players right now, and I have to close off every single one of their stories.
They had to write like some sort of epilogue, or did you like?
No, it happened organically. I mean, it's not like I scripted the final fight and I didn't script what they would choose as their epilogue.
Right.
Again, how I played it mostly was I kind of let them sandbox their own story. I really didn't want to influence what kind of decisions they made. So every single one of their decisions was literally their decisions. I just rolled with it and just kind of reacted how the stuff in the world would react.
Yeah.
And in the end, they all created some really interesting stories that I'm like, oh wow, I didn't think of that. And again, like when you watch a movie, you're watching a character follow, play their like adventure. But sometimes when you get a bad actor, and you can just feel like they're just repeating off a script, it's no real fun.
Yeah.
But seeing it face to face, seeing the players, like Jihan says earlier, my actors, really live out their characters, and seeing those organic situations, or just seeing those real emotions that come out of them when you throw a curveball, or when they fail at something, or when they find something that they're really happy about. You get to really see the looks on their faces, and that is the thing that worried me the most, because if the epilogue doesn't, if the last session doesn't do that, then they would once again they would be like, oh no, but I kind of want to finish that character's story, or I want to bring him back in another campaign, or can I play this character in another campaign, just reincarnate him back into level 1, that kind of deal.
I feel like that when you do that, it cheapens kind of like the whole campaign.
It does. And luckily enough, all the players were so happy with, they were happy enough with, I wouldn't say so happy, just happy enough with their characters that they're like, you know what, this is his story. We're done with this. Is their story. They're going to be doing their own thing, and like we'll just leave them to adventure off for their own futures.
Yeah.
And that I think was the most satisfying part. No one wanted to suddenly, it was like, oh, can I continue playing this character in the next campaign or whatever, anything like that. They just wanted to retire them. Like, you've deserved it. You've went through so much. I'm happy with you. And now they have like their own stories.
Like, they'd just be glad that they never have to touch the character again. I mean, in a good way, right?
Like they, I think you're the one who coined it. Like, you have war stories that you tell with one another.
Sure.
Now they all do. Then they're very happy to, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that time we did that, etc., etc. Yeah. So now they all have their war stories, but they talk about their characters like an old friend, and so that I think is great. And again, something you can really do with a long campaign as compared to a shorter campaign or a one shot, where it's just cool moments. But then when you have a long campaign where it's a group of people, they all talk to each other like they're old war buddies, and I think you're the one who coined that. And so
I'll take credit for anything. Please stop touching Sapphire. Okay, so a little bit about what. Whoa! Damn it, Mund. A little bit about the campaigns I've run is that I've always had a tendency to kind of want to develop the characters. I want the characters to develop themselves organically. Yeah. At the same time, I kind of want the players to change organically.
Ooh.
Like, in the sense that you start off as a tank, but in the end you sort of realize that what you were meant to do, kind of like, oh, maybe I wasn't meant to be a tank. Maybe I was meant to be a support character or something.
Oh, you wanted them to naturally feel out their like play style.
Yeah.
That's an aspect I didn't really think about.
I guess I sort of failed the first time. So in the second campaign, which I successfully finished, I think I felt
well done.
I made some of them do that. Did you ever feel like some of your players ever get to feel that, like, that emotional change as a player and in their characters?
Well, there were some parts of the adventure where in the beginning one of our characters, let's say, was a Furbolg cleric. Mm-hmm. But their whole thing was that they lived for a long time kind of ignorant of the world, and there was a whole family issue. But then later down the line, because of a complete, like a curse from, the Egyptian people, Sothis, he had become human, and some of the other players changed their races completely as well because of the curse. And it kind of, it wasn't intentional, but when that happened, my players realized, it was like, oh, okay, it's weird being a different race. I actually got to see them, like, it's like, oh, what are these abilities? How do I feel about these abilities? Why can I cast magic now? And then, like, why am I how can I breathe underwater? I was like, oh man, I was tall. Why am I a human now? And when they started realizing that there was so much outside of their personality other than their class, like, for example, the Furbolg, it ended up that his story, that he felt more and more inclination to return to being human, and eventually he became a human cleric. But even then, he focused so much more on the tankier side of being a cleric rather than the support side.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up becoming, well, I like to joke, he became the SWAT guy, you know, with the shield and and a gun, is like checking the corners and stuff like that, like a SWAT. And I'm like, you're the cleric. And then he's like, well, it feels natural, and everyone like they just agree. It's like, oh yeah, he's the SWAT guy, he's the tank. And I think that's what, you know, the 5e, the D&D people, they wanted, right? You know, they didn't want the cleric to be so typecasted as a healer.
Mm-hmm.
And they made so many different subclasses that made them so much more viable as tanks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's still typecasted a lot as just the primary healer.
Yeah.
But then now we have a healer who's not a healer, who's a legitimate tank, and all the players can rely on him as a long range tank.
Well,
and I think that was great.
Okay, I mean, but then you're forgetting multiclass.
Some of them ended up multiclassing, but it was more the spellcasters and the magic arcane types rather than the others. And again, that's mostly because, you know, different access to spells, different access to certain features. That felt a little bit natural. I mean, sorcerer is an easy thing to multiclass into, and it's very ideal as a cross-class sorcerer. Right. But a lot of them played, like, for the most part, they all just gained levels in their core classes, but they just ended up playing it differently. And I think that's another aspect of it, of a long campaign. We always like to say, you know, the players have to know their class, the players have to know, you know, their race and that kind of thing. They have to know their skills. Yeah. But then I think another aspect to it is the DMs have to know how to play certain classes, because everyone doesn't want to, you know, not many people want to play a bard when it's a one-shot or that kind of thing. Most everybody just leans towards wizard or rogue or fighter, human fighter, like, you know, like the trope. But that's only because, you know, it's a one-shot. There's not really much there, and if you can always rely on the attack power type. Yeah. But if you have a long campaign, you have to learn how. The DMs kind of have to know how to prepare a world for their bard. Yeah. Like, what does the entertainer's class really give you as a bard? Well, how do your spells really work? What kind of story or what kind of NPCs are attracted to bards, and what kind of conflict does a bard get into? Like, for example, in the Critical Roles campaign number 1 for Scanlan, like, out of nowhere, he's like a bard, you know, happy-go-lucky, a great entertainer, you know, big talker, but then suddenly, you know, he's a little bit of a charlatan, but then he finds his daughter, and that's the kind of world that character as a bard would, like, it really feels like that's something, you know, that would react very well to a bard. Yeah. And that's why I really appreciate that. And I think, again, for the DMs who are playing long campaigns, learn how to create a world for different classes. Try to, you know, make a world that a warlock can really play out a warlock story, not just have extra powers or not just have extra action or surges for fighters and stuff like that. Yeah.
Another way to look at it, and this is how I look at it, is I really try not to look at class. Unfortunately, I'm more towards the background. Ooh. Because people tend to kind of like overlook the backstory a bit more. And if you kind of concentrate on the class, you are going to focus on class-specific skills, class-specific. But if you want to tell a good story, sometimes the world doesn't care if you're a cleric. Sometimes the world doesn't care if you're a rogue. So if there's a situation where you need a lockpick and you're not a rogue, well, tough, because, you know, I didn't build this campaign just for a rogue. Yeah. True. So that's another way of sort of looking at it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's definitely another thing that makes a long campaign with regular characters different from a one-shot. Yes. Because you often have to figure out, and again, like, for example, another one of the things that if you typecast too much, like the ranger, you know, having to track through forests and stuff like that, they're so underutilized in every one-shot that, you know, nobody wants to play them. Yeah. But, you know, in my home campaign, everybody kept saying, because I love rangers, everyone's like, dang it, we need a ranger. And I'm like, oh, am I favoring the ranger a little bit too much? So definitely.
Yeah. Rangers who become rangers really want to be rogues. That's what I say.
I like to differentiate them. I like rangers. I do. I think they're you know, a little bit appreciated.
Was there anything special about the characters that played in your campaign? As in, like, did you give them like special like homebrew things or characters? Like,
oh yeah,
some really really standout ones.
No. I think one of the things that I did with my players was that before the campaign even started, because learning from my first failed campaign, I had to really figure out what the expectations of the players coming to the table was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to avoid the whole burnout situation, I kind of wanted to know what made them enjoy the game,
Mm-hmm.
what they'd like to avoid, what they would really stress about but actually really enjoy seeing in a story. And that kind of stuff includes items. Because in one-shots, some people like, oh, can I buy a Robe of the Archmagi at level 5? And realistically, that's a legendary item that are barely few in the world, and yet suddenly you can buy them off the rack.
Yeah.
And that seems a little bit too much. And so players tend to want to have these items just to help boost them, and that's one of those expectations that if you don't give, like for example, if you give the ranger or the rogue that wants the crossbow expert, and they want a repeating crossbow, but you never have it in your world, it really frustrates them, and I definitely identify that. So instead of just giving it readily in every store, I would ask them ahead of time, during my session 0, is there any particular item that you really want in this world? And for them, they pointed out things like, I want wish candies, I want an NPC that I could marry, or I want a
You can
family.
find that in the shop.
Yeah, you can't find that in the shop,
Right.
and so you'd have to figure out how to create scenarios where they could work towards those items that they're going after.
Okay.
And that way, it doesn't feel like I'm completely cheating them out of what they want.
Right.
But it takes more effort than just asking for it at the store.
Yeah. I did this thing in the current campaign that I'm running now. It's under like a 3-month break for now. But
Again, rest is important.
rest is important, as is being a new father. I keep mentioning it every episode, I know. But I think I've gotten to a point where I've sort of streamlined a lot of the mundane things. For example, I don't, like, other than things that I really do want to give the players if they deserve it, I just usually ask them, like, hey, so you guys are headed to an item shop. Is there anything you're looking for in particular?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Like, other than that, unless it's story specific or it's a key item, I rarely like stock up an item store and stuff like that, because I used to be that guy. I used to be the guy.
I am that guy.
There you go. And I'm running a weekly, like bi-weekly campaign.
Yeah.
And it's a 30. Like, we kind of limit it to an hour.
Ooh, so then, yeah, definitely,
So-
you would definitely have to adjust to that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you only have an hour, you don't want to spend the entire hour at a shop.
As a matter of fact, we don't go to shops during the 1 hour. Like before the shop or after the shop.
like a downtime between games.
So sort of like, it's things you pick up at AO.
Yeah, that's true, and that's definitely another point to add. Just because there's a mechanic for it, just because there's rules for it, we tend to have to adjust these things for our tables.
Yeah.
So for, like, in your scenario, like 1 hour every week, and absolutely, I totally get that. I don't think I would enjoy playing in a game where it was only 1 hour, but all I did was shop.
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely for that too.
Yeah.
But luckily for us, my regular players are able to arrive and we can spend like 4 or 5 hours playing the game. And so having the shops organically happen and feeling the economy of each place that they went definitely added to the flavor of what they're doing. It's like, oh crap, this place have this stuff. Is like, no, it's got an academy, but they only sell to like high level wizards and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit organic that way, but it also presents story elements. Like, it's like, okay, so we can look for this stuff. We know this stuff exists. We were able to catch one of the orphans there, and then they know a place where they sell this specific thing that they're looking for. So let's look for it. And then of course the shady people are going to use it, and it's a chance for the rogue to actually use Thieves' Cant, because Thieves' Cant, Druidcraft, you don't see them being utilized.
Yeah.
And so, like, oh, I know a language, Thieves' Cant. I was like, okay. And it never gets used. And all the different languages that it's like, oh, I know Sylvan, I know Giant, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In most 5e modules, or AL modules, they don't really come into play a lot.
Yeah.
Or you tend to have to cheese them. Like I was like, oh, I know I'm playing in Avernus. Okay, but I know Infernal now. But in this case, they're like, ah, crap. It's like, does anyone know how to speak Abyssal? I was like, nope. I was like, oh, dang it, Wizard. I was like, can you use, like comprehend languages? And then they start using, figuring out way more ways to use these unutilized spells to actually get through the world. But that's only because my players are familiar with the worlds and we have enough time to play. So, play with your table, I think that's a good takeaway.
Okay, so we're moving on to the main question here, and I think this is a really big question for the campaign.
Okay.
There was a big boss, and I know there was a Tarask involved.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of our two audiences over there.
Yes.
Shaza and the one who's watching this video.
Okay.
There was a huge Tarask, and it was buried under a city, or was it like, did it trample a city?
Oh, in the Pathfinder setting, the Tarask is a creature that's like a spawn of another bigger creature, and it's a calamity creature, sure. But as most Tarasks are, they're kind of immortal. They have a high regeneration, and they hibernate deep underground.
So in Pathfinder, it is a giant T-Rex?
Essentially, yeah.
Essentially a giant T-Rex.
Essentially giant T-Rex, yeah.
And was this the final boss?
It was one of them. My players were so focused on the fact that the Tarask was coming, they forgot about a bunch of other stuff that existed.
Okay.
And so they didn't notice that the final actual BBEG had brought a mutant Tiamat to attack one of the cities in one location, and then another swarm of aboleths in a completely different location.
Okay.
And then there was a wild magic surge because of the Tarask.
Right.
That ended up teleporting my players literally across the world that I had to prepare a map for.
Speaking of wild magic, if you are interested in dice, we've got some dice over here, some new dice from Credit, ladies and gentlemen. We are open from Wednesdays to Sundays, especially next week. It's the school holidays. I know the Kung Flu is out, but we want to try and keep you entertained. So come on over to Wild Magic. We are open from 3 p.m. to 10 a.m.
And if you can only stay at home, then we have plenty of content from our content creator here.
We've got content here. We are risking our lives to go to the store for your pleasure.
Yes.
So please click onto that YouTube subscribers, guys. Last week we had 78 subscribers. This week we have 83. So,
welcome to those new subscribers. Thank you very much.
Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming. So Wild Magic Surge.
Yep.
As you were speaking.
Yeah.
And I heard one of the players turned bad.
Yes, they did. Again, not something I had ever planned, but it was just a series of things that ended up happening that organically occurred. Again, everyone was so focused on the Tarask that it was the final BBEG, other than the actual BBEG Dragon Wizard guy, that they had kind of lost the ball on a lot of other things. And so in their desperation, and they very much felt a desperation, because they knew that I'm going to use not the 5e Tarask, which is a little bit of a pushover,
30.
but I was going to use the Pathfinder's Tarask. And so they knew that, yeah, I'm going to screw them over with this Tarask. So they were really panicking. And they just happened to were able to find a deck of many things in I can't remember where it was. I think it was in a mummy's...
Well, that can't be good.
Yeah, in a mummy's chest or something. And it is worth every level of notoriety that it gets. Because, again, I couldn't stop them from pulling it. All I could say to them was, please be very careful, because a lot of these things don't... there's no way to survive these things. And one of the cards, the ones I was worried about the most, was the Avatar of Death. Because the Avatar of Death in 5e is... again, similar to some of the Tarask, is a little bit of a pushover. Mm-hmm. And so it's not impossible at all to kill him. However, in Pathfinder, the Avatar of Death is not the same. It is described as, the lore behind it is that it's described as an entity that lived during the primordial times. And so it's literally has always been there. Yeah. And it's literally all around you, omnipresent, always. All that the card, Deck of Many Things card Avatar of Death does is that you can see it, and it can see you. And so literally you have invited death into your home, and in the moment of desperation, they're like trying to figure out, okay, the deck of many things can give us like an amazing wish. It can give us some good weapons. It can give us some backup. We might get some gold. You know, we might become nobles. You know, maybe some of these bad things are there, but we have a really good chance ahead of time. Like there's like what, like 30 cards in there. You know, there's like a 1 in 30 chance to pull out one of these things. So you know, we could keep pulling them. And I'm like recording these. I'm like on an Excel sheet, you know, so I can prove to my players I'm not you know, like scripting any of this. I'm like, okay, yeah, they're all on this list. You want to pull it out? Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Go ahead and roll I can't remember what it was. Like, oh yeah, roll a d20 or a d100 or something, or 3d6s or something, and then they rolled them. And they got good ones. They're like, oh yeah, we got a lot of gold. We got diamonds. We've got Revivify now from the diamonds. It's like, somebody gets a knight. I was like, hey, I can get a knight. And it's like, is he here? I was like, no, he'll appear in due time. It's like, okay, we're doing good. It's like one person gets I can't remember what it was. Finally something bad, but it was just like, I think some permanent damage or something that was easily recoverable. I was like, okay, we're doing great. We only pulled one bad one. There's still a few good ones here, but that's the thing with statistics. Yeah. The less choices there are, the bigger the percentage.
Yeah, bigger pool of bad.
Yeah, bigger pool of bad. And eventually, one character is like, shoop, Avatar of Death. And I'm like, oh no. And like, I had told him already ahead of time, okay, if you pull out the Avatar of Death, I can't pull those punches. It's strong. It's not 5E's Avatar of Death. This thing is impossible to beat. There's no way of beating this thing. I'm like strongly implying it. But again, they felt so much of that desperate situation going into this final fight that they saw no other way. So they pulled the card. And I'm like, oh no, you're dead. Avatar of Death has taken you, and you've just your soul is forfeit now. And it was literally this, I think, the session or 2 sessions before the final session.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh no. And then another player, similar, there were 3 players doing this. And then another player's like, oh no, damn, can I do anything? Can I use a wish? And I'm like, there's, you know, a regular wish is not going to be strong enough to counteract a deck of many things with, you know, like cards. And so the only thing equivalent would be the wish card in the deck of many things. That would be your best chance. And they're like, okay, it's still there, right? I'm like, yes. It's like, okay, there's still a chance I can get it right. I'm like, yes. But you know, there's a lot of other things in the card that's bad too. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. And pulls it out, gets the Oblivion card. And so it teleports you to a random, like a plane.
Plane of existence.
And again, I kid you not, I prepared the Excel sheet for all the different places that he could have gone. And just so that I could show my players, I wasn't fudging this, you know, like literally this is what you rolled. And unfortunately, it was one of the warlocks. And the warlock was a celestial warlock.
Okay.
Of Avandra. A normal, you know, like ordinary, pretty decent deity. However, his story was when he was young, he was whisked away into the Feywild, and Lurue, the unicorn archfey,
right,
kind of kidnapped him and kind of brainwashed him a little bit, just a little bit. It happened at the beginning only a little bit. So he thought that entire time he was, you know, like serving Avandra, only to realize that he was serving Lurue. And then when he found out, he was like, oh, okay, so you're my god, but it's, you know, just literally an archfey.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, so you're my god now? And so he was like, okay, yeah, we can roll with this. But then it ended up a whole crazy ex-girlfriend situation because, you know, warlocks, that's the story he wanted, and that's the story I could play. And when he realized, damn, she's crazy, I don't want this. And so he eventually, through the story, cut off all ties to this archfey, who is a crazy ex-girlfriend, and he went back to his original deity, Avandra.
Okay.
And he was the one who pulled out this card. And so one of those planes that I had like set up was the astral plane, where his crazy ex-girlfriend was.
Okay.
And so I'm like, oh god. And then like he rolled, and I'm like, it's like, okay, what could it be? I had every other plane there. I'm like, oh, what could it be? Feywild? Yeah, I could run that. Astral plane. I'm like, are you sure? And it's like, oh no, this is gonna happen, isn't it? This is happening, isn't it? I honestly couldn't believe it. It was. I would love to say that I had planned all of this like a mad genius, but it was complete RNG.
Oh my god.
And so he teleported, and his soul was lost. His body drops, soul lost to the astral plane, and he just finds himself in Lurue's dimension, and she literally, with only his soul and no defenses at all, just crazily caress him back into her side, and so he immediately just became under the he returned back to his crazy ex-girlfriend.
Okay, we're jumping ahead, but some of your characters made it, right?
Technically all made
all
it.
of them made it.
All of them made it.
All
They finished the final fight. They beat the BBEG they needed to beat. They all survived. Well, survived for the most part. Yeah.
What would have happened if they didn't? What would you have done?
That was one of my worries.
Yeah.
What would happen if they had died? And because that final fight was scaled in such a way that it was absolutely lethal, but because they were level 20, I imagine they could have like handled it. But if they had failed, then similar to my first campaign, the BBEGs would just continue to wreak havoc on the world. And so they would have lost. Technically, in a way, they would have lost.
And your ending for a long campaign would have just ended anyway.
Yeah, but again, learning from my first campaign, you learn how to balance stuff.
Right.
Like a lot of effort went into figuring out how to balance these encounters and make it challenging, but actually winnable. And it was that's why it was so important for me to finally get them up to level 20. Because when they're at that level, there's so much that they could do, even when they're alone, that they can turn around a lot of situations.
Was this a milestone, by the way? Or
It was milestone, yeah. And so by the time my players were level 20, they were ready. And it was a tough fight. It was a long fight. It was a surprise, a big factor of randomness. But they were definitely able to beat it, minus the one character that decided to jump into the mouth of the Tarrasque.
All right.
And actually die and actually become an evil person. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
That's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, and yeah, that was the Deck of Many guy who died because of the Avatar of Death. How he returned was coincidentally in the story. They had been in a place where they could talk to Asmodeus. Long story short, they were working for the queen who needed to reenact her contract with Asmodeus, and in exchange, Asmodeus would grant them a boon. Asmodeus, and so the surviving characters were like, sneakily, because we had an agreement amongst us that during that whole kerfuffle, that it's like, oh yeah, the Asmodeus wish, can I have the dead character from the Avatar of Death come back? And I'm like, I guess it'll work. It gets you to continue playing, and yeah, but you do realize that you'd then be a paladin under Asmodeus. And then they're like, is that bad?
Well, we'll find out.
I was like, well, you're about to find out. And then, because he was the one, at first he was fine. He was like, okay, I'm fine, I'm doing fine, there's nothing wrong with me. Mm-hmm. But then because he went into the Tarrasque, he died again in the Tarrasque. That's a permanent death. He died, healed himself because he's a paladin, and then he permanently died. And it was the final session. I couldn't just cut him off in the final session. So I'm like, let's see. Well, technically he is Asmodeus' property now. So
Asmodeus.
Yeah, and so Asmodeus comes in. It's like, oh, instead of death save, roll your death saves. And then he's like, okay, sure. And then he comes back to life. But every death save he had to roll, he lost one of his important NPCs, and in exchange for those souls, he got more boons from Asmodeus, a stronger sword, an immortal body. He ended up becoming a tabaxi who became a rakshasa, and it was a whole thing.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and in the end, he was able to succeed. He even killed some of the fan favorite NPCs that jumped into the Tarrasque with him.
Yeah.
And everyone was just like, no, what? And they were distraught. But in the end, I had to figure out a way to make that good for him. And because he was a paladin, I like playing devils, and so I just explained it as, oh, but you're a paladin of freedom, living through your tough life. Isn't mortality a kind of shackle? Don't you want to, really be free? And like when you died, there was nothing left. You didn't have to worry about anything. So, I want you to come back, and I want you to see all these mortals around you. Don't you think they're a little bit trapped? Go ahead, free them. And then it's like, oh shit, okay, yeah. So yes, he's a paladin of freedom, okay. But the freedom there is it's pretty twisted, yes. And that ended up working, so yeah.
Man, and I know the player who played this guy, so man, and that's it.
It was-
that is the end of it.
Yep.
What's next?
Well, I'd like to take a break.
Just take a week-long break, or maybe a 24-hour break.
Oh,
Or,
well, our master DM Safi says, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, right? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
just like
Yeah, but
put
I'm
down
just,
the PHB.
Yeah, I'm just kind of reeling back from the fact that all the stuff that I've learned and all the stuff that I know about the Pathfinder world is
Yeah.
now just like, okay, I have to let go of that now.
Oh, you're just gonna let it go. You're never gonna do Pathfinder again.
I don't know. I mean, Pathfinder 2E is out, and the adventure paths that they've got on are really damn close to the material that I prepared for my players.
Yeah.
So when my players, it's like, hey, Nas, is this the Black Dominion? And they're like pointing at it's like one of the creatures in the new second edition. And I'm like, yeah. And then it's like, is that the pyramid that we went to? It's like, yeah. On the Jupiter planet? I'm like, yeah. So the thing that we looked in that one time, the whole countdown thing, that's them. And this actually happening in this module. I'm like, yeah. And I was like, so our adventure was canon? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe they want to play another Pathfinder session, but I haven't decided whether I want to do that yet.
Well, we discussed this before the podcast.
Yeah.
You've already guaranteed like your next long campaign is going to be on Wild Magic Channel, and we're totally going to do that. That's yep. You heard him. Said yes.
I did not say such a thing.
And it takes more than one language. But yeah, I think I'd like to see that happen. I want to see. Well, you promised us a couple of things actually, right? You haven't delivered on a few things, by the way.
I'm still running the Adventures League for Avernus. I'm still playing Devils. That's one thing.
Sure, that's your thing, but you kind of promised us an evil one shot. Dimitri's coming up.
That's
Dimitri.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to play that, aren't I? It's weird, man. Again, the flip between being a DM and being a player, and then being a DM for a character that I created as a player is weird. I mean, that whole thing was just strange.
Let's talk about it. I love talking about Dimitri.
Oh God! All right,
You knew. Okay, we only have like 10 more minutes.
Are you
Okay.
talking as Yazid, or are you talking as Vlad? You're not projecting him, are you?
No. I've totally forgotten how to play Vlad.
Anyway, so yeah,
Okay, so for people who don't know, we're trying to do this little project, and I think it's not really a secret. We're doing a kind of like a twist of Carmen Sandiego
yeah,
with an AL character that you have.
yeah.
We were talking in the chat like a few days ago, was it yesterday, like about how you saved the wolf.
Oh,
wolf
yeah.
pack
Because again, organic story. My first player, being a player for another DM, Nadia.
Yeah.
And yes, I was that player who stole the wolf. I didn't know. I was the one who stole the wolf when I wasn't supposed to steal the wolf. And that was an accident. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do that.
But that was just great DMing from
It was
from
great
Nadia.
DMing. She ran with it, and I enjoyed that. And again, the Dimitri player wasn't a character that I created. It was when I was DMing another Adventures League campaign that I needed an NPC. So I had the players and just explain me an NPC. And I'm like, oh, okay, woman, like elf, okay, rogue, mastermind, yeah, sure, okay. And then what's her whole shtick? Femme fatale, yeah, okay, heartbreaker, yeah, sure. And I just wrote that. I was like, what's her name? I was like, Dimitri, oh yeah, sure. And that I didn't make that. I didn't make that character. But then because I played so much as a DM, I don't really know how to create a player character, at least back then. And so I was just like, you know what? First Adventures League, I'll just use this NPC that my characters created.
Okay.
And then just jumping into Strahd, and thank goodness we did the
Strahd campaign.
Yes, the Strahd campaign.
Yeah.
Because it was great for a character to go through, and through Adventures League. I really got the feeling. I was like, oh sweet, this is really fun playing Dimitri. And these moments, these emotional moments are really character development-y.
I bet the guys at Wizards,
Yeah.
they'd be surprised to hear you say that.
What?
The fact that oh, I had some really good character development in an AL adventure. Because that's not the point of AL, apparently.
The point of AO is to level you up.
Yeah,
And
but we do it differently in Brunei, apparently.
yeah, we do. Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Do we?
Yes, we do. We definitely do.
Huh.
And Wizards, apparently, they just couldn't care less now. They just want people to play the adventures. They don't even tell you how to level up and stuff anymore.
Lol. Okay. Well, that's a little bit easier on me. You know, I'm very lazy with rules. That's
Yeah.
why I have. That's why we have Jihan here in the store.
Exactly. Rules Master Jihan.
Rules Master Jihan. DM Jihan. Check him out.
And the character that I intend to play on that series is Vlad.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
If I get on,
Of course.
I still need to pass auditions.
Uh-huh.
But Vlad is just a basic character that I just got. Like,
Uh-huh.
oh, you know what? I'll just try my best to build up a character with a little bit, with crossbow expert. And, it's a vampire setting. Maybe I'll do a Van Helsing kind of thing.
Yeah. So you initially came into there again as a like a character made to shoot down and kill.
Yeah.
Serious character.
Yeah.
Then you ended up just become a love-struck, love-lorn young boy.
Exactly.
After
And
femme fatale. How did this story happen? How did this story happen?
I don't know. I just recall someone
We played this.
someone talking to me like in my peripherals and saying, "Oh, I'm supposed to love Dimitri." Okay.
We continued to play that.
Yeah.
I went and was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird that he's kind of coming on to me like that. What would my character do? Again, never follow. Like, if you don't follow that advice. That's what my character would do. So
Right.
I just went. I just went with it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, she's a femme fatale. Let's just screw him over. As,
Yeah. There was that one whole episode.
Oh God.
Where you went in disguise. And I was suspicious of Dimitri the whole time. And
because she is suspicious and all.
we had the dance and then I got stabbed.
Ah, damn. And the thing with the dress, too. Oh, God.
Exactly.
If you want to know what we're talking about, just check out the Strahd Adventures League.
Yeah.
And, just there's a moment there with the blue dress. And,
Probably the best AL of all time.
What? No, it wasn't. No, we don't have records of that.
Yeah, no, that was probably the one that I would have wanted.
Yeah.
I remember my wife had to go to the hospital that night too. And I almost didn't want to go. But I digress. Anyway, man, it's always fun having you around here. I think we should have you here more often. That's a yes. We'll bring some more Sapphire Dragons for you to like touch and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So all the best for your next campaign, which I hope will be here at What Magic. And
question mark?
I am really looking forward to Dimitri San Diego.
Yeah. I just really hope that the players actually know the reference of Carmen San Diego.
Probably.
Because I grew up with that Carmen San Diego, those older cartoons
Yeah.
where you actually learn about the place that you're going. Again, I love that. That's why I love Pathfinder.
I played
you
the
go,
game.
You go to a place, learn about the place, and it's part of the puzzle that you have to solve. That's really great, and that's why I worry because in Faerun there's so very little of that I kind of have to really research these kind of things.
Never say never to other planes of existence. Right? You could always go to the Feywild. You could always go
I can't do that when you guys are
Pandemonium.
No, you know how dangerous those places are. They tend to get underplayed. Like for example, when the Critical Role group did the whole search for Grog thing, and they were in Pandemonium.
Yeah.
That was great, but they only survived because they were so high level. And I'm like, that is appropriate. But when people go to the Feywild and stuff, that stuff will kill you. It's so dangerous.
I don't mean to talk about Vlad, but I will. After the whole Strahd thing, I played Vlad in other adventures.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Dungeon Master Safi's world of Rivia,
Yes.
and I went to
The Witcher world, yes.
the Witcher world, and I went to a Pandemonium playhouse.
Oh, God.
That was under Jihan's rule.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of bad luck with women ever since. I mean, Vlad has had a lot of bad luck.
These are absolutely coincidental. Again, these don't
This is
reflect...
all Dimitri's fault. I'm saying.
It's complete coincidence. Complete coincidence. The curse of Dimitri.
Yeah.
And that's funny, too, because the whole backstory of her with the other players when I was DMing Dimitri was that she's supposed to be a character that every other player knows, but in a bad way, like a rival. And so literally her story was that she screwed over them somehow and broke their hearts. like and broke their hearts in like the romantic sense.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was supposed to be just a throwaway thing, but then it ended up being real when you came to the table. Like I have never seen. I'm playing my own NPC's origin story, and it's weird.
I think it's great. You never give that much attention to an NPC. And
I normally don't have to.
but now she's gonna be like the best NPC like in Brunei and Dungeons and Dragons history.
Oh my gosh.
Alice, thanks a lot for stopping by once again.
No time for questions.
And
No time for questions.
no time for questions from our
Do you have
chat.
questions? No. You got questions? No.
I have many questions.
I only have two.
Two.
Oh, you know what? Well, let's hear them.
Oh.
Oh, well.
By the way, Shaza's in the camera. By the way.
Yes, in the camera spirit person.
Mm.
Ask away.
Well, I do have one for Anas, but I also have one for Yazin.
Yes. We are ready.
Yeah, sure.
I know you have a lot of great things to say about Pathfinder. But if ever, somewhere in the future, would you ever give it a chance and try it out?
Try what out? Oh, question for
Pathfinder.
Go on. Speak your heart. Speak the truth. Speak what you really feel inside. We all know.
There are other RPGs that I would like to try before Pathfinder, but I wouldn't say no to a Pathfinder game. I think that's a good enough answer.
We're winning.
Alright, so my next question to Anas is, I hope the mic can pick this up, I don't know. What was, I know it's probably going to be hard to pick, but what was the most memorable moments for you for your first and second campaign? And it would be the moment where it's like, oh, it's like so great, and then a moment where it just broke your heart.
Oh man. That's like 3 years worth of. Oh
Pain.
man, there are a few. Yeah, there are a few.
If you can just like pick through which, can you like figure out one
Oh.
among the many?
Oh man. Oh, that's hard. Okay. I guess if I had to pinpoint one, it would be, because the final BBEG for both campaigns is the same person, but at different times. And it just ended up happening like that. I didn't intend it at first, but it ended up just happening like that. And I think the reason why I'm so attached to this BBEG, and it's one of the NPCs in Pathfinder. It's a kobold emperor named Merlocrep, and I think all of those moments, the great moments, surprising moments, and the really sad moments, for me, happened with that BBEG. I actually kind of wanted him to survive, but the players are level 20, so they were able to take him out. It was because this NPC was written in a way that he wanted to, as a kobold is, a weak creature, but they want to serve dragons, and eventually they want to be dragons. They kind of revere them. And so this Emperor Kobold wanted to create an empire of kobolds so that he could properly take care of his people, that kind of thing. Very noble. But then his prophecy guy had said that he would be the ruin to his own empire, and so he became paranoid and started capturing children and things like that for ritual sacrifices to learn more about the future and try to figure out a way to subvert it. But in the end, he was the undoing to his own plan, because capturing those children was what brought the heroes to come find him, and they ended up stopping him, but he had cursed them to one day come back from the grave to continue to create his empire. And so he had an absolute tragic story. And so every time he came back, he would try to gain more of what he'd lost, but he would only delve further and further away from his real goal. And the horrible part was, because he hated the players so much for killing him the first time, he'd captured those children again, only to trick one of the players to kill one of the kids that they saved. It was a beautiful moment where the characters were just like a true deep hatred for this one BBEG, and it kind of it wasn't even real, but then they were like, this guy is they felt it is the absolute the absolute shit. They created their artifact level weapons so that they could take down this one kobold enemy. But because the first campaign never ended up finishing, they were always regretting the moment because they knew that that kid was being possessed by Merlicrep. They knew one of the kids died because of him, and it was their fault. They were the hand that killed those children. And when he returned in the second campaign, they were just like absolutely blown back, and they're like, no, after all this time he got away and he's still here. And then they immediately just chased after him, and they wanted to take him. I wanted to be like a cameo appearance, in like a book or something.
Right.
But then they reacted so strongly to this character that I'm like, okay, I guess he's the BEG now.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best parts. There was so much evoking of emotion when I had to narrate him, and I had to narrate his actions and why he does things. That I think that's kind of when I figured out my style of kind of over narrating NPCs. So yes.
All right. I think that's all for the questions for tonight, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.